Hi, I'm Troy W. Hudson. Welcome to this week's edition of my voiceover Weekly Stew. Wow, what an intense, crazy, wild, wacky, all over the place week it was for me in voiceover land. I want to tell you, I'm looking at my calendar right now, which is when I'm looking off here, I'm not just like staring off into space and not making eye contact with this. On Monday, for an actual fundraiser project, I always enjoy doing those for a firefighter group, chili cook-off, barbecue sort of event. And that was a lot of fun. I got to do a Southern character voice. Take a listen. The Jordanton Fire Department presents the 27th Annual Malvern Pacifica Cook-Off with competition in chicken, brisket, and pork spare ribs. We're also having a chili cook-off with jackpot pinto beans. Our auction's Saturday, and music will be provided by Jerry DeLeon and South Band from 8 to 12 p.m. All proceeds go to benefit the Jordanton Volunteer Fire Department at the American Legion Hall in Jordanton, Texas. And I began working in depth on an audiobook called The Blue Unicorn's Journey to Ozum. Now, what makes this different from other audiobooks, specifically even children's audiobooks, is that the author had me submit a couple of different demos, and I read it in my normal storytelling voice of, and the Blue Unicorn's Journey to Ozum, et cetera, that sort of excited, intuit storybook teller, narrator style that I love to do for children's stories because I really get into the content, and the story's written really well. Well, then I gave them an alternative because they said, that's good, but, it's not, there's nothing wrong with the style you gave us, but can you do something like an English storyteller voice, something, and I started doing that. Going into Blue the Unicorn's Journey to Ozum. So I watched a lot of BBC. There are pronunciations, obviously, that you hear a British person speaking that as an American, it doesn't roll off the tongue as naturally. So the production process is taking a little longer, but at the same time, it's a blast because there are fun animal characters in there that I get to give personality to. We got squirrels, we got unicorns, and they are real. I've seen pictures. They're illustrations in the book. They are real. Chapter 13. Don't make the little squirrels angry. After dinner, Blue and Gaiso talked some more about the trip. They considered all the possible routes and eventually decided on a starting point. They would follow the tallest mountain on the eastern horizon until they reached it. Musica Woods is in the south, but I think it would be better to head east for a while before turning that direction. I don't want to get anywhere near Mog's castle if we can avoid it, Gaiso said. Ora looked at the nut in her hand, thinking, Olina's right. Why waste a perfectly good nut on Mr. Fancy Antlers? She laughed. I can see we need to teach that doe a thing or two while her big brother's off on his quest. She broke the shell open and popped the tasty meat into her mouth. Some people do tongue twisters, and some people do funny wordplay. Sally sells seashell by the seashore. Sally does sell seashells by the seashore, and it's always made me wonder, why would you go to Sally if you could just walk there on the seashore and get your own seashells? But nonetheless, it seems to work for her, and she's got a thriving business because everyone's always talking about her. I do some tongue twisters, but mainly what I do to warm up my vocal cords, and it's actually, it feeds my soul, it feeds my spirit. Honestly, I'll tell you what I do. I read a chapter or two of the Old Testament with some of the more in the Bible what other book are you talking about, right? The Old Testament in the Holy Bible, and it helps me to articulate and slow down and focus and read because it can be challenging to just read that normally. Many of the Old Testament stories, especially when you get into the repetition, and some of the names are very, very difficult. to say, and it causes me to slow down and articulate more than I would if I were normally doing a voiceover script. And then I transition from that and read a chapter or two of the New Testament, and I read that in a more conversational, flowing way that I would just be telling somebody the story of the Bible. And so that's basically my warm-up technique in the morning. I'll sit and have my coffee. That's my warm-up technique. That's the way I get ready for my voiceover day, along with a few scripts I have that kind of challenge me to articulate and put certain phrases together that aren't so easy and don't roll off the tongue quite as easily. But I do tend to wait a little bit into the morning after I am warmed up and more in the flow to do storytelling and narrative stuff like that. Early on, I'll do maybe explainer videos, more e-learning content, because it gives my throat actually time to warm up and move throughout the course of the day to where they're more expressive, dramatic, even some of the character voices I do later in the afternoon, which require maybe some yelling or guttural moans or real intense, scratchy kind of things that could wear on your throat and change the tone of your voice for the rest of the day. I normally tend to schedule those things later in the day, and that works for me personally. I'm not sure about other folks, but that tends to be the cycle I go through, and I've developed that knowledge and awareness basically by just doing it over time. There would be times before I learned these techniques that I would record anything wherever and just random willy-nilly put it in my calendar and do it whenever. And I would maybe schedule a deep, gruff talking military general early in the day, and he's barking at his troops, and I'm not really going to get completely into character because I might have some work to do later on, and I don't want to blow it. So you get the idea. The intense, really dramatic, forceful kind of character voices. Like the other day I did a hungry bear, and a hungry bear is obviously intense. And so I had to tell the client, now, I want to get this done for you as soon as possible, but I need to schedule this later in the day, and thankfully they understood, and I appreciate that. Because of the intensity involved with it. And the same thing with an Army general, which I did that same day. I grouped them together on my calendar. I'm looking at my calendar right over there, and it says I grouped them together, so I'm not making this stuff up. I had a couple of character voices, one a superhero and one kind of a tough New York accent kind of thing here. And I don't know why your mouth moves over here like this when you do it, but it tends to move over here when you're saying it, so it works better. It works, kind of a Buddy Hackett. It works here really good. And so I didn't do the Buddy Hackett thing, but it kind of works over here because sometimes you got to do it over here. This is kind of a Stallone thing. And sometimes you got to do it over here, kind of a wise guy kind of thing. Not thing. So I did that. E-learning a little bit after that. More audiobook Blue Unicorn reading. And so that was an interesting transition. It helps to go back, especially when you're doing a character voice all the time for a story. You want to go back, and I do this. I reference the last 2 or 3 segments of the last 2 or 3 chapters I did and listen and read along with him to help me get back into character. Because the last thing I want to do is listen to it, and at one point I'm maybe doing a Gandalf type of very rich, deep storytelling thing like this. And then later on, I'm doing a very high-pitched kind of, I don't know where this is coming from, and so you don't want to mix the two because they don't match, and you'll go back and listen and go, where did that come from? So stay consistent. That's kind of the rule. I started something with Bible Pathway Adventures. And one of the things that they want to do is create videos from all of the stories that have been illustrated, because now they not only have the app, but they also have, they're getting into actual print of the stories. And of course, they have the website, and they have coloring pages, and they have all these wonderful tools to help kids and the parents learn about the Bible together. I'll look at that character and I'll go, that character deserves a bold or an evil or a kind of a whiny thing here, or any number of different voices that I look at and I get inspired. Even some of the ladies, yeah, as best I can, we'll do some of those voices as well. So what I'm doing is putting a video together, essentially with audio that I produced, in some cases 3 or 4 years ago, one for Facing the Giant, which was the story of David and Goliath. Look up Bible Pathway Adventures on YouTube and check out their channel, and you can see their video, or you can see a snippet right here. Now, David looked Goliath straight in the eye. "You come against me with a sword and a spear," said David. "But you don't scare me. I come against you in the name of the Lord, the God of this army." Goliath nearly choked. How dare this Israelite boy threaten him? But David hadn't finished. "Today, God will hand you over to me. I'm going to kill you and give the bodies of the Philistines to the birds and animals. Then the whole world will know there is a God in Israel." Goliath had heard enough. He raised his spear and stomped towards David. Clouds of dust rose with each step the giant made, but David wasn't afraid. He grabbed a stone from his bag, put it in his sling, and swung it above his head. David aimed at the giant and let it fly. The stone whizzed through the air like a rocket and smacked Goliath in the middle of his huge, hairy forehead. Goliath stumbled forward and crashed to the ground. David had killed the mighty Philistine with just a sling and a stone. Started work on a real estate investment audiobook as well. So I've actually got 2 audiobooks in the works right now, with a potential third one that I'm talking to somebody about. So the thing about doing multiple audiobooks, and I know some people like to focus on one, get it done, move it out the door, and move on to the next. Well, because of the scheduling on these, I took this project on pretty much at the same time, so I wasn't sure which one was going to take priority. So I don't like to schedule those back-to-back on the same day because it kind of confuses me. I can walk and chew gum at the same time, and I even know how to use a mouse. At the same time. If I was chewing gum, I could prove it and get up and walk around. But anyway, I can multitask, but grouping audiobooks together on the same day, not a good idea, I found in the past, and I've done it. And I end up sounding, I use one style for one book, and unless it's very similar content, I tend to begin to drift into another reading style, and I don't know why I do that. I don't know why I do that, but sometimes I do. So it just keeps it simpler for me if I focus on one and schedule 2 or 3 hour block, and then do some editing in the afternoon on that. And then the next day I'll do the other audiobook. So I hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of my VoiceOver Weekly Stew. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed going through the week and kind of rehashing what I did. And also, I think this edition kind of covered more of how I do things and why I schedule certain things. So hopefully if you're a new voiceover talent, or if you're curious about voiceover work, this was maybe a benefit to you to help you kind of understand why I do certain things. I'm toying, dabbling, pondering, thinking about doing a tutorial series on certain techniques and certain processes if anyone's interested. And hopefully if you are, you'll send me an email, troy@troywhudson.com. If you need voiceover production work, please keep me in mind, troywhudson.com. Or you can contact me through Facebook social media, Twitter social media, or any of my other social media outlets, channels, whatever they're called. Channels? Yeah, they're called channels. Are they called channels? Well, yeah. Can you turn it off? You mean like I'm going to turn you off right now? Yeah, okay. See ya.